Speaking of, well, not speaking of, let's take a tangent. Gödel's incompleteness theorem. I'm curious to know what you see as the applicability or non applicability of it with regard to how the brain operates. So, someone like Penrose or Lucas would say that it implies that the brain is not purely computational in the way that we imagine computation, let's say in a Turing sense, because of so and so. I'm sure you know the argument. What do you see as what does Gödel's incompleteness theorem has?
I don't think it has that much relevance, to be honest. I remember reading Penrose's book, The Emperor's New Mind, about 30 years ago now. I think shortly after it came out, and just at the beginning of when I was just about to go to college, waiting for this enlightenment about why it was going to be relevant, and it's clearly a very important piece of mathematical philosophy, right? It's telling us that there are axioms with any given formal system that cannot be proven to be true within that formal system. And as I understand it, was a sort of big blow against the Hilbert program of trying to bring closure to mathematical explanations. But quite what that has to say about the brain, I've never been convinced that it has that much to say. And this is partly because I don't think the brain is a computer. And so the fact that...
Okay, what do you mean when you say that? Because clearly...
Well, again,
not clearly.
Really, it's sort of, it does get a bit complicated because, firstly, we have to say, well, what exactly is Gödel's theorem saying? It seems to be, because of course the Turing class of computation is something where there is closure, and so I guess for me, Gödel's theorem, if you apply it to the brain, it may tell you that the brain is not a computer. On the reasoning that there are things that we can understand to be true within a formal system, that where a proof of that doesn't necessarily exist. This is going way back because it's been a long time since I thought about this. But firstly, that doesn't seem that surprising, because even if the brain were a computer of this sort, we don't know quite exactly what kind of computer it is. So we don't quite know what sorts of true statements should be not establishable by the kind of computer that the brain might happen to be. But I'm kind of happy with the idea that the brain does not operate according to these principles of logic. That it doesn't reach true conclusions about truths by combining these logical operations in a particular way that Gödel's theorem rests on. I mean, Gödel's theorem is a sort of deduction, I think, isn't it? I mean, it's a real strong form of logic. Does
that put you at odds with some of your colleagues? Because as far as I understand, most of them believe that the brain is some computational device. I could be wrong, could just have a bias set.
No, I think you're right. I think that, I don't know if it sets at odds, but firstly, I don't think it particularly, the whole point about Gödel's theorem for Penrose was it's then made a claim about consciousness. And that was a connection that was, to be honest, never very clear to me. It's sort of the idea that we consciously experience things that as being true or false, that we know cannot be proven that way by a system of logic through Gödel's theorem. So therefore, consciousness is not a property of these kinds of formal systems. Again, fine, right? still might be the case that the brain does do some information processing. It still might be the case that it is just of a constrained or restricted kind. So you can I think you can have that. You can accept that the brain is an information processing device, but maybe it doesn't have the kind of class of universality for which Gödel's theorem becomes relevant. Not all computers have to be universal. But I do also worry that people use that language too loosely when they talk about the brain. It's a very easy thing to say that the brain processes information, and that consciousness is a form of information processing of some sort that we just don't quite understand yet.
If you enjoyed that clip, then the full podcast is out right now. You can click around here. Enjoy. Subscribe to Theories of Everything to get notified of upcoming podcasts, as there are new full-length podcasts every week on the topics of mathematics, physics, consciousness, free will, and AI.